start my story, because it's basically this. My mom, at 15 years old, was raped when she was walking home from the pool one day. Didn't remember it. And, as a kid, I remember when they told me that, and you're trying to process that. I'm thinking, gosh, how do you not remember that? And I've had lots of people tell me that when something so traumatic like that happens, that your mind can block it out as if it never happened. And my mom just didn't remember it. And I can't even imagine the trauma that comes with that. And so my grandma had 4 other kids. And my grandma told me, she said, your mom was my good kid. She said she was my shadow. And she said, I never worried a bit about her. And she said, and I just completely missed it. And my mom will tell you she was very naive for 15. She didn't understand anything about babies, and she didn't know what was happening. And finally, one day she told my grandma, I'm sick, I need to go to the doctor. And my grandma says that she remembers my mom was gaining weight, and she thought, yeah, we should maybe take her to the doctor and see what the doctor says. And so they did, and the doctor come out and said, well, she's pregnant. And the best way I know to explain it to people is after the initial shock wore off, I had a praying mama who said, we're going to go to church and we're going to pray. And that's what they did. And if you were to have heard her tell the story, she made it sound so simple. And I understand that it couldn't have been that easy, but you see, my grandma very much understood how big God is. And I tell people everywhere I go that these things that we read in the Bible, that he formed me in my mother's womb, that he had plans for me, my grandma believed it with all of her heart. So she was not shaken in this moment. And that is so hard to wrap my head around, because I just can't even imagine. But my grandma was that kind of person. She was so amazing. And so for her and her 15-year-old daughter, immediately they had some choices that they had to make. And my grandma told me, she said, son, I had a lot of people, even a lot of Christian people, saying, now, Miss Lovins, in the case of rape, nobody would be upset with you if you allowed your 15-year-old daughter to have an abortion. I mean, all the things the world says, but I just tell people I am so thankful that I had a praying mama who wasn't listening to the world, and she was listening to the one who created the world. And it was that simple for her. It was that cut and dry. I mean, it was so, just to hear her tell the story was amazing, and I heard it over and over and over. And so they chose life. And so there's so many things that go from there. Adoption was the plan until my mom heard my heartbeat. And when she did, it was a game changer.
Wow. Wow, that just touched me. Wow, Jason. Yeah, I get it. I've had the honor of talking to some pregnancy crisis centers around the country, and of course, they put it out there that you don't have to abort your child. Your child can be birthed for adoption to bring joy to a loving family. But what you just said right there about your mother hearing your heartbeat and that connection, what has that been like for you and your grandmother and your mother, and the three of you working together to help you become the man you are today, which is why, at the top of the show, I stated that you only have one father that you know of, and that's God, who's been your father, and no earthly father, but you were raised by a single parent, a mom who loves you. She heard your heartbeat, and your grandmother who was also there to provide that support. The reason why I'm asking that question is because a lot of people nowadays who are not pro-family or pro-life, they look at the plight of some women who would be in the same predicament as your mom was, say, that's never going to work. And I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, yeah, it's working. It's working really well.
Yeah, and, from that moment when my mom heard my heartbeat, I jokingly tell people, even from the stage when my band is playing, I say, listen, I know that my 15-year-old mama probably had no idea what she was getting into. But in that moment, she heard my heartbeat. It was a game changer. And my mom was not abortion-minded, thankfully, but adoption was the plan until she heard the heartbeat and she told my grandma, "I want to keep this baby." And my grandma said, "Okay, if that's what you want to do, that's what we're going to do." And so my mom had me. She turned 16 2 months later, and went on about life as normal as life could be. I do tell people, and I have a picture that I show when my band is playing somewhere. I found a picture of my earliest childhood memory, and it happened to be my mom's high school graduation, and the date was printed on the back, and it was my third birthday. So I tell people that not very many people can say your third birthday party and your mom's high school graduation party happened to be on the same day, but it was. And my family made it very clear to me at a young age, you don't have a dad. We don't even know who it is. But you have a heavenly Father who loves you more than you'll ever know. And would just continue to remind me of that over and over and over. And it's always been enough. And I had my grandpa was amazing. He was not a believer. He did not come to follow Christ until he was 70 years old. My grandma prayed for him for 50 years. But he was amazing, and you would never know he was not a Christian growing up. But he was always there. So my grandparents and my mom were very much my parental unit.
Well, it's a good unit, my friend. It sounds like they were doing some great things. And look, let's be clear. They were doing this in Huntington, West Virginia, Appalachia, which is not an easy place for anyone in terms of being mother, father, sister, brother, and child because of some of the impoverished areas that are there. Talk to me about Appalachia, because Americans have this view about Appalachia. We of course, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance is from that area. He made a famous book about it, Hillbilly Elegy. I went on to become a successful movie. He's now Vice President-elect. But Appalachia, I'm thinking about the Judds. I've actually spoken out there at Huntington. I've seen some of the impoverished areas and some of the needs that need to be met. Talk to me about what it was like for you growing up in Appalachia, and how your family made it through.
Sure. I have to say, I'm more proud than ever to be where I'm from. The older I get and the more I travel, the more I am just so proud to be from these mountains. Appalachian people are just different. And it really is an honor to be called that. I have to say, my grandpa, he worked so hard his whole life. He was a construction worker, and so we never wanted for anything. I mean, we were very blessed in that aspect. But I could take you right down the road and show you some pretty rough spots. And so, yeah, there are definitely people in our area. And as I've gotten older, I mean, the drug problem has gotten way worse around here. So there's some rough stories. But I'll be honest, I kind of missed all that, and I do count myself very blessed for that. But yeah, it's a different world here, and it's really hard to explain if you've not experienced it for yourself. Some of the best people I know, and I did read his book, our coming vice president, and it did resonate because there were so many things that I remember reading, thinking, yeah, totally, I get it, and so he really painted quite a picture of our area and oftentimes it's very true. And so, yeah, they're the best of the best, and but at times hard. There's just no getting around it. So I feel honored to be here, but I have to say I did miss a lot of that. I didn't experience what you're referring to, and so I am thankful for that.
Well, I'm thankful that and grateful that you can actually attest to that fact, that there are a whole lot of strong, faithful families that have made it through probably the greatest test that they can imagine there in forest areas like Appalachia and even other rural areas throughout the country. We're going to take a break. When we come back on the other side of the break, I'd like to talk to you about how your family nurtured you in love and gave you uh, the moral guidance to actually become Jason Lovins, the musician, the people hear you sing and speak. We're coming back with more of America's Hope with Jason Lovins after this.